Good afternoon, everyone. This is Nick An from City of Tampa. I cover for Brandon. He cannot attend to the meeting. I'm called the meeting. So let's start. If I have something is not correct, please let me know, okay?
Will do.
Okay, so one is called order. The second is for the public comments.
If anyone would like to make a public comment, you can use either the chat function on the dashboard, or you can raise your hand using the icon at the top of the tab. And we'll give it a few minutes to make sure that if anyone would like to speak, they can make themselves known. Okay, Nick, I'm not seeing any hands and I'm not seeing any chat, so I think we can move on.
Okay.
If you'd like to do the roll, we can have Cheryl call that out.
All right. Okay, so next agenda is called the motion to approve the last meeting minutes, which is July 9th.
All right, if everyone had a chance to review the minutes, you can open it up to discussion, and if you'd like to move it along quicker, you can ask for a motion to approve the minutes, and once you get that approval, you can ask for a second.
Okay. I cannot. I didn't see any comments from here, so assuming I can go to the next to have somebody to second my motion.
Nick, you have to ask for a motion to approve the minutes first, and then once you get that, then you can open it up for a second.
Yeah, Johnny, I'll make the motion.
Okay, that sounded like Brian made a motion to approve the July 9th minutes.
I second.
This is Jeff Sims. I'll make a second.
Okay, Nick, and then you can, we can ask Cheryl to do a roll call so that we can also capture attendance at the same time.
Okay, so Sherry, can you do the roll call, please?
Yes, Brian Gentry.
Present.
Nick An.
Present.
Fred Baxter.
Present.
Troy Tinch.
Present.
Anna Quinones.
Did you say Achilles or did you say Quinones?
Hello, I'm here. Sorry.
Justin Willits.
Present.
Jeff Sims.
Present.
Achilles Cortelles.
Present.
And Dan Budens. Okay, motion passes 8-0.
Okay, thanks, Cheryl. Okay, Nick, I think we're ready to move on to part 4 of the agenda. If you want to introduce the item, I'll pull up the PowerPoint.
Okay, so for the action item A, re-evaluation of the performance of update transit asset management, payment and bridge, and system performance. I think the presenter is John Wang.
Yes, I'm here. Thanks for the intro, Nick. Okay, so once again, just for the record, Johnny Wong, MPO staff, and I'm here to provide you with a status update on our performance over the past 2 years for 3 federally required measures, which are transit asset condition, pavement and bridge condition, and system performance. All three of these measures originate from MAP 21 and FAST Act legislation. Both of those legislative acts emphasize performance-based planning and accountability pertaining to transportation investments. The requirements found in this legislation prescribe specific performance measures that DOTs and MPOs have to calculate and track over a period of years. This is maybe the fourth or fifth presentation on the topic that we've brought to you since 2016. Beginning in that year, we initiated conversations about safety analyses and tracking our progress toward achieving quantifiable targets that were set. And you may remember some of these specific targets that we have established for fatalities, serious injuries, fatality and injury rates, and bike and ped fatalities as well. Since 2018, we've been doing the same thing, tracking progress and setting targets for transit assets, pavement and bridge condition, as well as system performance. And in November of 2018, the MPO adopted targets for each of these three measures. And since then, we've adopted those, or we have provided those targets, as well as our analyses in TIPS and the LRTP that we just updated last year. So both of these documents have been updated to reflect the targets that we set, as well as indicating which projects we're prioritizing that we feel may have an impact on moving the needle for each one of these performance measures. The targets that we set last for 4 years. So because they were set last in 2018, the next opportunity we have to adjust them will be 2022. But the information that I'm presenting you with today should be used to inform that decision that will happen 2 years from now. So essentially, we're just providing you with a little bit of a midterm report card. The first performance category that we have to discuss is transit asset management. And transit asset management can be abbreviated as TAM, and it can be thought of as a process that involves first creating an inventory of transit assets. Under this rule, the transit agency has to conduct an inventory for all assets that cost more than $50,000. Once they've identified all of those assets, they assess the condition using specific criteria, and then they use that information to create a business strategy so that they're funding maintenance of these assets at the appropriate time. And the goal here being to extenuate or to extend the life cycle of each of these assets so that they can capitalize on that investment. A second acronym that we should keep in mind is SGR, or State of Good Repair. State of Good Repair is a condition, which means that the assets are performing their intended function, they're performing it safely, and the investment in that asset has been recovered. The TAM rule that we're discussing applies to all transit providers that receive federal funding. And of those agencies that receive funding, they can be broken down into one of two tiers of transit agencies. A tier 1 agency would include HART, and it really means that they manage an inventory of a lot of passenger vehicles. It's basically a big agency. A tier 2 agency would include things like the Sunshine Line and T-BARTA, which doesn't manage many passenger vehicles. They also have to report the condition of their assets, but they report them directly to DOT. So what we're looking at today is HART specific. So HART and all tier 1 and tier 2 agencies, again, are required to inventory the assets that cost more than $50,000. They place them into one of the 4 categories that are shown on this slide, either rolling stock, equipment, facilities, or infrastructure. They then rate the condition of those assets, and they create a process to optimize maintenance timing. Once that's complete, DOTs and MPOs coordinate with the transit agency, and we set targets for the percent of each asset category that's not in a state of good repair. Because we're calculating the percent of assets that are not in a state of good repair, a lower number here would be better. Ideally, 0% would be not in a good state, but the data that we have collected is coming from HART's 2018 Transit Asset Management Plan, as well as the recently updated 2020 version of that plan. Since 2018, the percent of rolling stock vehicles that are not in a state of good repair has increased from approximately 28% to 41%. That increase might seem kind of high, but it's just about standard for the industry. The way that we should view this figure is that if Hart were able to replace 16 buses each year, the performance would remain consistent on a year-to-year basis. However, we know that the agency is subject to budgetary constraints. So in some years when they don't have a lot of revenue to use for bus replacements, they're only able to purchase a handful at a time. Other periods when they're in a boom cycle, they may be able to replace 20, 30, or potentially even more buses than that. And because Hart operates without that consistent revenue stream, we're going to expect to see this number jump around considerably from year to year, and every 2 years and every 4 years. Until the backlog of needs is addressed, this number is going to jump around considerably. So 12% over a 2-year period is not unexpected, according to the Transit Asset Inventory Manager at Hart. The second asset category is equipment, and the percent of equipment assets not in a state of good repair as of 2020 is 32.5%, which is 13% higher than in 2018. This again seems like a pretty significant jump, but again, that's not out of line with industry standards, because most of the vehicles that fall into the equipment category have a life cycle of only about 5 years. This number jumps around a lot more than what you would see for passenger vehicles that have a life cycle anywhere between 10 to 15 years. So a fluctuation by 20 to 25% is not out of line for what the industry sees. And I want to quickly draw your attention to this 19% target that's listed in this table. This is the subject of the action for today's agenda item, because when we reported this back in 2018, we accidentally reported it as 81%, but it needs to be corrected to reflect the inverse of 19. The third subcategory for transit assets are facilities, and these are subdivided into 2 subcategories. The first comprising passenger and parking facilities. When the targets were set in 2018, 10% of those assets were not in a state of good repair. As a reflection of some investments that were made in those facilities over the previous 2 years, Hart has brought that number down to 0 in 2020. The second subcategory is administrative and maintenance facilities. The figure reported in 2018 was that 0% of those assets were not in a state of good repair. We're a little bit skeptical about this because at the time that the initial TAM plan was produced in 2018, the heavy maintenance facility was not inventoried. And so the reason why the 2020 performance has fallen to almost 30% of assets not in a state of good repair is because that maintenance facility was properly assessed. And we knew ahead of time that there are a lot of issues with deterioration of that facility. It's subject to roof leaks, flooding, and a number of other calamities, so to speak. The fourth and final asset category is infrastructure. As it was in 2018, the 2020 performance is that 0% of track segments have performance restrictions, so they're operating perfectly. One note is that Hart does not own those track segments, so we reached out to the city of Tampa, which owns, and they confirmed that the percent of assets in not in a state of good repair is still 0. The MPO, of course, works with the transit agency closely to help them improve their assets and maintain what they currently own. We have prioritized about $4 million in funds over the past 5+ years for bus replacements. We've also prioritized $10 million so that the agency could upgrade its CAD AVL system, which is essentially vehicle location and tracking. We also prioritized $1 million for concrete infrastructure improvements to the Marion Transit Center. The second rule is related to pavement and bridge condition. Under the pavement and bridge rule, DOTs and MPOs have to establish pavement and bridge targets for the national highway system and then report them in our TIPs and LRTPs. In 2018, when we presented this data and requirement to our board, they agreed to support the statewide targets, which are shown on this slide. So in 2018, when our board established targets for interstate pavement in good condition, we established a target of 50.9%. In the 2 years that followed, that condition has improved by almost 10%, which is expected because we have a commitment from the district or from DOT that they will program funds to maintain an adequate level of pavement condition on its network. The interstate pavement in poor condition back in 2018 was 0. That number increased marginally, so it went from 0% to 0.3%, but still it's nowhere near approaching that target threshold of 5%. So we would anticipate that 2 years from now, that still won't be a problem. The non-interstate NHS pavement in good condition for 2018, when that target was set, we were exceeding it at 42%. In the 2 years that have passed, that number has decreased by about 6%. But again, we have that commitment from DOT that they will invest in resurfacing. And so we would anticipate that in 2 years, that number will be brought up to standard. And as it stands, 36% is still within striking range of meeting that 40% threshold that we aspire to. The non-interstate NHS pavement in poor condition back in 2018 was 0.2%. A marginal improvement in 2 years brought it down to 0.1%. For bridges, there's 730 bridges in Hillsborough County. 462 of them are on the national highway system. And so we assess only those 462 on the NHS. And back in 2018, when the target was set, 78% were in good condition, far exceeding the 50% target that our board adopted. And 2 years later, that number decreased by about 1.5%, still nowhere near the threshold. And for NHS bridges in poor condition, the target in 2018 was set to be less than 10%. The 2018 performance was 0. In 2020, we're still at 0. The third and final rule is system performance, which is measured in terms of level of travel time reliability. And level of travel time reliability, or LOTTR, isn't necessarily intuitive for most people. So as we work our way through the data, I'll give a short primer before we get into performance. So the way to understand travel time reliability is that it is a measure of dependability in travel times. It's not necessarily a metric that states that a shorter travel time is better than a longer travel time, but it's about consistency. How many times per week does your travel time within a short variation of what is expected? And so TTR is really a metric of unexpected delays. It gives us a good idea of how much non-recurring congestion is out on the network, whether from incidents like crashes or weather or special events or anything that is outside of the ordinary congestion that we see. The way to interpret reliability is one of two ways. So high reliability would indicate that your travel time is consistent over a specific time period. Let's say, for example, that your commute to work takes 40 minutes each day on average. Some days it may dip to as low as 35 minutes. On some days it may take you as long as 45. but that 5-minute plus or minus spread indicates that you still have a high reliability. On the other hand, low reliability would be if your commute to work on average takes 40 minutes, but when you get in the car, you have no idea if it's going to be a short duration, like some days it could take you 20 minutes, others it could take you 60. That would indicate that you have low reliability. And in an urban setting, the primary causes of low reliability are bottlenecks, incidents, work zones, weather, poor signal timing. We're going to discuss that in a later presentation, and special events. So level of travel time reliability is measured according to the prescribed methodology that FHWA handed down to us. In November of 2018, when we set these targets, the Hillsborough MPO agreed to support statewide targets, which are measured in the following ways. The performance of the interstate NHS is to have greater than 75% of the network having a level of travel time reliability less than 1.5. That means that 75% of the days of the year, your commute on a bad day should add no more than 50% of the travel time that you expect on average. So again, assuming that my commute takes 40 minutes, on 75% of the days where I'm commuting to work, that travel time should be 60 minutes or less. On the interstate, on the non-interstate NHS, that target is to have a level of travel time reliability less than 1.5, more than 50% of the time. And lastly, we have a metric for freight reliability. This is assessed using truck travel time reliability index value, and the target for Hillsborough planning area is to have that value be less than or equal to 2, which means that on the very worst congested days, the travel time for freight should not double what it is on average. And in 2018, the performance for travel time reliability on the interstate was 71%. In the 2 years that follow, that percentage has increased by 4%. The travel time reliability on the non-interstate NHS in 2018 was 59%. That number has increased considerably to 81%. And we've also knocked down the TTR index value, which was 2.08 in 2018, and it's currently at 1.89. All of this data that I presented you with today runs through the end of 2019. It's not including anything that's occurred in 2020, so none of the effects from COVID are captured in these numbers. We would expect that it will impact that, but we won't have accurate data until 2022. There are a lot of causes for low reliability, and a lot of the work that we do with the Smart Cities Alliance and on this ITS committee addresses those using TISMO-oriented strategies or ITS. Integrated corridor management is one topic that has been discussed. And I want to give a plug for a plan that is set to kick off tomorrow. The Smart Cities Mobility Plan will be looking at TISMO strategies and technologies that can help improve reliability. And so that kickoff meeting will be at 9 a.m. tomorrow. I saw a number of you confirmed. If it's not on your calendar, please let me know later.
Existing sign structure or overhead structure, which we talked about with them, I thought previously, and we asked if we could, and they said yes, but I don't know if we then said, hey, bye.
All right, apologies for the distraction. And so once again, we are not able to update any of these targets until 2022 when those initial targets expire. At this time, we're just presenting you with a midterm report card. But there is one action item, which I already mentioned. In 2018, when we reported the TAM target for equipment assets, we accidentally reported it as 81%, not in a state of good repair. That number should be corrected to be 19%. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, John. It's a lot of information. Very good.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Yeah, actually, I have a question regarding the travel reliabilities, travel time reliabilities.
Mhm.
Now, you said we have target trying to lower below the 2. Is that the index value below the 2? Now, when you have those each time, those performance, so how often do you tracking that particular route to know that a performance? You check like every day or every week or every month? How do you measure that?
I think that if anyone knows better, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think that the freight travel times are binned in increments of 5 minutes and then aggregated to a month. And so when you're looking at this number, it's a month by month metric that's aggregated for a year. And so, there's a lot of seasonal variation that's not captured within this metric. It kind of normalizes because we're looking at it over a 12-month period. And, certainly during the summer months, you would anticipate that the index value would rise well above 2. But in downtimes like fall and spring, that kind of offsets the impact of having a lot of congestion on the network during summer and around the holiday season as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any more questions? If no, then we go to the next.
So we need to get approval for the action. So if you want to open it up for a motion to approve and then a second after that.
Okay, right. So open to motion approve.
Hi, this is Jeff Sims, EPC. I'll make a motion to approve with the recommendation that we correct the transit asset management equipment target from less than or equal to 81% to less than or equal to 19% of assets not in a state of good repair.
Somebody second?
This is Achilles Cortelis. I motion to second the motion.
Okay, and Cheryl, if you could please call the roll for the vote.
All right, Brian Gentry,
Yes.
Nick On,
Yes.
Fred Baxter,
Yes.
Troy Tinch,
Approve.
Anna Canones,
Yes.
Justin Willits,
Yes.
Jeff Sims,
Aye.
Achilles Cortelis,
Yes.
and Dan Budens. All right, motion passes 8-0.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so John, we can go to the action item B. That's a regional transportation system management and operations memorandum of understanding. The
Yes,
presenter,
thank you.
John. Okay.
Yes, thank you again. I'm going to be quick because I'm already getting a little hoarse, but for the record, Johnny Wong, MPO staff, and I'd like to brief you on an effort that is underway to develop a regional TSMO MOU. Unlike most of our other committees that may receive this presentation, I'm assuming that everyone here probably already understands what TSMO is. When our board first created this ITS committee, its primary focus was just on the ITS architecture, but over time, this committee's focus has broadened beyond just structures to include operational strategies. And we do a lot of assessments of tech that's kind of on the cutting edge of development, like applications and so on and so forth. And so TSMO is supplementary or complementary, but in many ways it's like a replacement for ITS conversations. The way that I understand TISMO is that it's a management principle and it focuses on operations and technological enhancements that are necessary to improve the function of the transportation system. It's important to add a disclaimer that TISMO is not just about adding capacity. These principles can be adapted to satisfy almost any need on the network, including improving safety, resilience and security, and also offering greater modal options. The focus on TISMO is timely. It seems like we're rapidly developing technology, and every month when we go to conferences, it seems like we're all inundated with new vendors offering new products, and it seems like there's just a lot of opportunities focusing on TISMO. Certainly, one of the most compelling arguments for why TISMO is to compare the cost of deployments of TISMO to the cost of a capital project. And so when we're answering the question why TISMO should be a go-to strategy, it's because it's primarily really cost-effective, and it's also an efficient way of making improvements to the network in many cases. From the research that we produced for the 2045 long-range plan, we showed that with coordinated signal timing across Hillsborough County, we are able to increase corridor capacity by 4% on average. We also showed that with deployments like ramp metering technology, we might be able to increase capacity on the freeway system by 8%. And when you compare that to the cost of a widening project, TISMO strategies and deployments like retimings and meters are extremely cost effective. There are also a lot of promising developments that are on the near horizon regarding data strategies. Things like predictive analytics are now able to allow us to make more informed planning and operational decisions. And vehicle automation is just now getting underway across our region. And surely there's a lot of other disruptors, industry disruptors that we have to consider. We think that the public has an understanding that these technologies are maturing, and although the general public may not fully understand the applications to the transportation space, the general public definitely expects us to be using tech to improve their travel conditions. I know that I'm preaching to the choir, and I just showed a modified version of this in the previous presentation, but deployment of TISMO could be the most appropriate approach for us considering the scale of congestion problems in Central Florida. Just taking a look at I-4, that interstate system passes through mostly rural land, and it's bookended by two of the largest metros in the state, which means that travelers who are using I-4 experience congestion from incidents, construction, bottlenecks, weather, special events. They experience it in a rural context, in an urban context, and no one on this call can probably say that they've driven from Tampa to Orlando and not experienced a delay of some sort. In the District 7 region specifically, we've been fortunate enough to deploy a lot of operational strategies and tech, ranging from low-hanging fruit like encouraging active transportation and encouraging transit use so that we can improve our mode split. We've also done things like special events management, and that's a coordinated process. We also do traffic signal coordination. We've also, again, been fortunate enough to pursue more ambitious projects like ICM on I-4, managed lanes on portions of our freeway system, and also the coordinated exchange of data like work zone data as just one example. The same is true for District 5, even to a greater extent, and District 1, which includes Polk County, which is one of the districts that touches the I-4 corridor. I-4 we believe, is the perfect use case to organize around TSMO strategies and deployments for alleviating congestion, improving safety, and also improving safety, security and resilience. This is a very important corridor and a hot topic because incidents along I-4 affect both inbound and outbound traffic for both Tampa and Orlando. It's been dubbed the most dangerous highway in America several years running. It also makes sense for us to coordinate a TSMO approach with Orlando region because we're highly dependent upon one another. It's a great place to work for designing a TSMO strategy. Or it's a great cause to rally around is a better way of putting it. And so what I'm asking for here is your support in an effort to create a coalition of jurisdictions around the I-4 corridor that has a goal of advancing TSMO. So the proposal is to assemble a coalition of partner agencies all across Central Florida, not just the ones that touch I-4, so that we can market and advance TSMO as a viable strategy for solving mobility problems. And again, not just the mobility problem of congestion, but also safety and multimodal travel. We also would like to create this coalition so that we can help identify and develop champions on all of our boards and as well as other elected officials, get them to buy into the vision of using TSMO to improve travel conditions. Those elected officials and our board members can help us advocate for projects. Once they advocate for a project, they can help us then deliver funding so that we can deploy these technologies and actually move the needle pertaining to system performance, pertaining to safety, and as well as pavement and bridge condition. So these kind of strategies can help us achieve the targets that we have set in each of these performance areas. We also want this coalition to work together so that we can harmonize operations across jurisdictions as best as possible. We actually discussed this topic about a year ago, and one of the concerns that came up was that the wording, the language of the MOU made it seem as if the individual agencies were going to cede control over to a coalition. And we worked with Metro Plan Orlando and the rest of the I-4 coalition members, and they amended the language in the MOU to make it very clear that even though we're participating in this coalition, we're going to maintain autonomy over the operations and maintenance of our system. And so we're going to maintain control over all of our deployments that are already out on the network. And lastly, one of the purposes of signing off onto this MOU is to formalize work that is already taking place. We would like this I-4 coalition to serve as a model for other mega regions across the state and nation to coordinate TSMO strategies. We're doing a lot of that now. For those of you who have participated in Clear Guide workshops and the ITS TSMO 101 course, you know that a lot of this work is being done already. Smart Cities Alliance is another great example. We would just like the MOU formalized so that we can be recognized for our efforts. This effort is going to be led by Metro Plan Orlando, and there are a number of MPOs within the I-4 corridor that are also new members of the coalition. We've had at least one meeting, and we're all working to formalize this MOU and begin scheduling meetings to discuss TSMO deployments. Metro Plan Orlando works very closely with our staff, and so we think that Metro Plan Orlando would take the lead, followed very closely by Hillsborough, and get other signatories like Forward Pinellas, the Polk TPO, Sarasota Manatee, and Pasco, not to mention the districts that control this interstate system. There are a couple objectives for this I-4 Coalition Working Group. Metro Plan Orlando staff has already received a STIC grant to serve as coordinator or liaison for the coalition. And so they are receiving money to organize meetings, do the scheduling, produce agendas, and as well as create a game plan, allowing us to market the benefits of Tismo and actually go out and find funding for deployments. So that much is already completed. The second step would be for us to formally adopt the MOU. And if that happens, then Metro Plan Orlando would use that STIC grant again to organize a membership list, schedule future meetings, and identify some causes that we can rally around. The slide in front of you shows more or less the formal layout for how this all would take place. We are, I believe, somewhere between task 2 and 3. Task 3 and 4. We have already previously completed the capability maturity model, which is a baseline for us to assess our Tismo effectiveness and work toward improving. We have identified some champions on our board and other councils around the region to help us advance Tismo as a strategy. And here we are looking to present you with this MOU so that we can formally adopt it and continue the work. Next steps, we've already hosted the initial working group meeting. A lot of the feedback that we received at that meeting was used to amend language in the MOU. One of the key aspects, again, was for us to maintain autonomy over our network. And so we were easily able to address the primary concern that our board had when they were presented with this about a year ago. If this MOU is adopted or approved by the ITS committee, we will then brief some commissioners and present it to the MPO board in November for their formal adoption. And this is an action item today, and so we're asking you to approve adoption of the regional Tismo MOU and forward to our board for consideration. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John. Anybody has any questions?
Yeah, one quick question, Johnny, regarding the MOU. Who do you see being the participants who would be signing and participating, actually, managing and operating the system? Okay.
There were a number of District 7 staff that participated in the first I-4 coalition meeting I attended from our agency. I think working on the planning aspect would be my responsibility. Working on the operational aspect would be probably you, Brandon, and someone from District 7. I can't identify specific individuals because titles change and things like that, but I imagine this will only work if we have buy-in from the county, the city, and the district.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely something good to codify. As you mentioned, it's something that we're already doing. It's just good to get it on paper. It'll help us kind of, stay organized and move forward.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks.
More questions? If no, I'm calling a motion to approve Regional Transportation System Management and Operation Memorandum of Understanding.
I'll second.
Brian, I think you might have to
Make
make the initial proposal.
I apologize. I'll make the motion.
All right, well, this is Jeff Sims. I'll make a second.
All right, Cheryl, can you please call the roll for a vote?
Okay, Brian Gentry,
Yes.
Nick An,
Yes.
Fred Baxter, Troy Tinch,
Yay.
Anna Canones,
Yes.
Justin Willits,
Yes.
Jeff Sims,
Aye.
Achilles Cortellus,
Yes.
and Dan Budens. All right, motion passes 7-0.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay, so next we go to agenda 5, that is the status reports. A, review last year's legislative addition positions and suggest new ones. Is Rich Clearington?
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
I can,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, good. I was having connection problems earlier, so I'm using my iPad. I'm just not quite used to it. There is no slide deck that goes with this. I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about the upcoming session of the Florida legislature and some of the priorities or positions that the MPO has taken last year, and what we might want to reiterate or add to this year. So just as a reminder, the legislature meets in the first quarter of the calendar year. So that session is coming right up, and it's important to prepare for that. Last year, we took positions, some of which were supported or adopted by the legislature, probably the most notable being securing full funding for the reconstruction of the I-275 and State Road 60 interchange in the West Shore area. And also we were in support of enforcement of cell phone laws and distracted driving, making those a primary offense. So we were successful in those regards. However, several of our positions were not adopted or not embraced by the legislature, and probably warrant reconsideration or resubmittal, if you will. I'm just going to highlight 4 or 5 of those. There is a lot of backup material that I think was part of your packet if you wanted to get more information, but very quickly, one thing we wanted to advocate for was more increased penalties for dangerous drivers and injuries to pedestrians. We also took a position that there probably needs to be higher standards to define what are known as hazardous walking conditions for school walks to school, along with continued support for state funding for a bus service that would be required as a result of those hazardous walking conditions. We also took a position against the elimination of crosswalks equipped with what are known as rectangular rapid flashing beacons at uncontrolled marked intersections. There was a bill proposed that would have done away with those in lieu of conventional red lights, which would have eliminated a lot of our RFBs in Hillsborough County. We also advocated for the use of toll revenues for public transit priorities, those priorities being defined through the MPO planning process. And more recently, this has not yet been proposed or advocated for, but I think the MPOs in this region are preparing to propose to the legislature or to take a position against what are known as legislative earmarks for public transit projects. This is where a particular legislator might advocate to insert a project or funding for a project into the state's budget. It's not that we oppose transit projects per se, but the problem with the earmarks is that they don't really result in additional funding because they're taken out of existing projects. So they don't result in more funding and could take dollars away from essential services. So instead, what the MPOs in this district have proposed in lieu of legislative earmarks is just to seek expanded transit funding overall rather than to reallocate the scarce existing resources. So that's essentially it. And I think this is an opportunity for you all to review and, as you deem appropriate, reiterate support for the previous proposals that I just went through, or anything else that you feel warrants attention at the state legislature. That's my presentation. If there's questions, I can try to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Rich. Anyone has any questions? And if no, then go to the next. It's 2021. Do we need? We don't need to approve this, right, John?
No, this is just status update. If you wanted to make suggestions, you can either, bring them up now and we'll note them and pass them along. If you want to email any legislative positions to me at a later time, we can accept them that way as well.
Okay. Maybe we go to second. Maybe with something we'll email to you later.
Yeah, you can email them to either myself or Rich. Really, anyone at the agency should be able to pass them along to the appropriate person.
So what happens is we're making the same, or this agenda item is going to the other MPO advisory committees. And whatever comes out of those meetings, particularly if it's a motion made, we will pass on to the MPO board, and they will consolidate into, or consider for consolidation into, a legislative platform, if you will, for the upcoming session.
Okay, all right, thank you. So then we go to the B, it's 2021 meeting calendar.
Okay, this is a draft calendar that we've created for next year's meeting schedule. The meeting schedule has been the same for a very long time. We meet quarterly in January, April, July, and then October. The dates, the tentative meeting dates are listed in this column that I'm kind of scrolling over with my mouse. If you'd like to make a suggestion for a different date, let me know. And then when we present the calendar to you again in January, we're going to formally approve them. So if you see a major conflict or a reason why the meeting should be moved, let me know sometime before the end of the year, and we can try to make that adjustment.
Okay, so then if we have any suggestions, also we can let you know later on, like I said, before the end of the year. Is that right?
Ideally sometime before December, because we usually finalize the MPO calendar early in that month and distribute it, toward the middle or end of the month. So the sooner the better. but
Sure.
these dates typically work. We always meet on the second Thursday of these months. And it's been that way for a long time, but if there's anything we overlooked, let me know as soon as you can.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay.
So we can move on to agenda number 6. That is old business and new business.
Yeah, the next meeting tentatively scheduled for January 14th. There's also, as I mentioned in my presentation, we're doing the Smart Cities Mobility Plan Kickoff meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. I believe that I sent out an email or a scheduler to everyone. If you haven't received a scheduler, let me know and I can forward it along to you. It would be great to have everyone attend if they can.
Okay, so anybody have any questions?
No, just a quick comment, Kevin, Johnny. This is Brian. I've got a conflict tomorrow. I'm going to try to attend at least 2 meetings, so I'll be in and out.
Okay, all right, that sounds good, Brian.
So what's the next is adjourned, or we have more items to need to discuss?
We don't actually need to discuss those. The addendums, just items that are kind of like for your information, and you can read through those in the packet. So if no one else has any new business, then you can adjourn if you're ready to.
Okay, so addendum A is TIS, our assess location, the design acceptance notice. And we have B, County 6 input on Western Shore Boulevard complete street project. So
Yes.
for those addendum, everybody can find out on the package.
Yeah, if you click on these on the agenda packet that was emailed to you through Constant Contact, you can view the documents. So I'll pull it up really quickly just to show you what they are. This is the notification that the supplemental EIS was accepted by FHWA, and there's some backup documentation in here. I think most committee members should be familiar with it. And then the second one is regarding a complete streets plan for West Shore Boulevard. And the county is looking to do some engagement so that they can hear from the public what their thoughts are on the plan.
So yeah, anybody has any questions or suggestions, comments? If no, then call meeting adjourned.
Okay, all right, thanks, Nick.
Okay, thank you everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
John,
Yes.
so anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you for filling in for Brandon. I appreciate it. And like I mentioned, I'm not sure if Brandon accepted the kickoff meeting tomorrow. If you talk to him, can you just let him know? And if he wants to send someone to fill in, that would be great as well.
Sure. Did you just send the email to him, right? The invite to him?
Yeah, would you like me to forward it to you as well?
Yeah, please.
Okay, all right, I will do.
Okay, yeah, so
Okay,
I will talk to him on that.
All right, thanks, Nick.
Okay, no problem. All right, John.
Have a good one, bye.